Hi, everyone. Tonight we are talking about why humans quietly stopped using their left hand. You don't need to focus or understand anything, just let the words pass by. This video has no heavy editing. It is made only for listening, especially while falling asleep. There was a time when hands were simply hands. They moved through daily life without much attention. One hand would lift, the other would rest. No one stopped to think about it. There was a rule, but it was never announced loudly. It lived quietly in habits and small motions and repeated actions done the same way again and again. Some people noticed their left hand waiting, others did not notice at all. The days moved on regardless. Morning light came in softly, work was done slowly. Evenings arrived without effort. There was a sense of order, though no one spoke of it. Hands followed paths they had followed before. The body remembered what to do. No instruction was needed. The street stayed quiet. Footsteps sounded soft and unhurried. Doors opened and closed without rush. People moved through familiar paths, carrying calm with them. Hands followed their usual places. One hand reached forward, the other stayed close. The air felt steady. Nothing needed attention. Nothing felt out of place. Daily life continued in a gentle flow, slow and dependable, like breathing that does not need to be noticed. Inside homes, routines stayed the same. Cups were lifted, pages were turned, tools rested where they always had. The calm repeated itself without effort. Movements felt protected by familiarity. There was comfort in doing things the way they had always been done. The body stayed relaxed. The mind stayed quiet. Everything felt quietly held together. Over time, the pattern settled even deeper. Actions happened before thoughts arrived. Hands moved where they were expected to move. There was no urgency, no correction needed. Life carried itself forward in a soft, steady rhythm. The left hand remained peaceful, unbothered, resting without concern. The days did not ask questions. The nights did not demand answers. Everything felt quietly taken care of. The rhythm continued on its own. Movements stayed gentle. The calm did not need an ending. It simply drifted onward slowly, comfortably into rest. The quiet continued without interruption. Time moved in a soft, unmeasured way. There was no sense of hurry, only a gentle passing of moments. People woke, worked, and rested without thinking about how or why. Hands moved as they always had, following patterns that felt safe and familiar. The left hand remained calm, present, and patient, never needing to be called upon. Everything flowed as if it had always been this way. In the background of daily life, there was a steady hum of routine, the sound of steps on stone, the slow movement of air through open spaces, the feeling of weight shifting from one side to the other. These things happened quietly without drawing attention. No one stopped to notice. No one needed to. The world continued smoothly, holding itself together without effort. As days blended into one another, habits grew deeper. Movements became softer, almost automatic. The body remembered what felt right. The hands followed along, one leading, the other resting nearby. There was no tension in this balance. It felt natural, like standing still or breathing slowly. The calm stayed unbroken, wrapped around every small action. Even as time stretched forward, nothing felt unfinished. Life carried on with a sense of quiet order. People felt protected by the sameness of it all. There was comfort in repetition, comfort in knowing that everything would continue as it always had. The left hand remained at ease, untouched by urgency, content to remain in its quiet place. Gradually, the rhythm became something that did not need thought at all. It existed on its own. The days held themselves together. The nights arrived gently. Everything felt softly arranged, as if care had already been taken long ago. There was nothing left to decide, nothing left to solve, only the slow, steady feeling that everything was exactly where it needed to be. The calm did not fade. It stayed present like a quiet companion that never asked for attention. Time moved forward without sharp edges. Mornings arrived softly without announcement. Evenings settled in the same way. Between them, life unfolded at a pace that felt easy to follow. Hands moved through familiar motions, steady and untroubled. One hand guided, the other remained close, relaxed, and patient. There was comfort in the way things repeated. The same movements returned each day, the same gentle order held everything together. People felt safe inside these patterns. They did not need to remember when they began. They did not need to know where they were going. The body carried on quietly, doing what it had learned to do without effort or strain. Spaces felt calm and protective. Rooms held stillness. Streets carried a slow rhythm. The world did not demand anything extra. Nothing needed to be changed. Nothing needed to be explained. Hands rested when they were not needed. The left hand stayed peaceful, unbothered by expectation, simply present and at ease. As time passed, the calm grew deeper. Movement softened even more. Actions flowed smoothly into one another. There was no pause to think, only a gentle continuation. The rhythm became something that existed beyond awareness. Breathing stayed slow. Muscles stayed loose. The mind stayed quiet, wrapped in a sense of quiet assurance. Long days and quiet nights blended together. The feeling of order remained steady. Everything felt arranged in advance as if care had already been taken. There was nothing to hold on to, nothing to resist. The world continued in its gentle way, carrying everyone along without effort, and so the quiet carried on. Hands moved when they needed to. Hands rested when they did not. The balance stayed unspoken. The calm stayed complete. There was no ending to reach, only a soft drifting forward, steady and unbroken, allowing rest to arrive naturally. The steady feeling remained, calm and unchanging. Nothing interrupted the flow. The hours passed without needing to be counted. Life continued in small, gentle motions that felt familiar and safe. Hands followed their quiet rhythm, moving when required, resting when not. The left hand stayed relaxed, settled into its place without concern. Everything felt held in a soft balance. The world around stayed quiet. Sounds were distant and low. Movement was slow and predictable. There was no pressure to respond or react. The body knew what to do and did it without effort. The repetition brought comfort. The sameness brought peace. Nothing felt missing. Nothing felt out of order as the calm stretched on. Thoughts grew lighter. Attention was no longer needed. Words could come and go without being noticed. The rhythm of daily life continued on its own, steady and dependable. Hands moved gently through space, then returned to stillness. The left hand remained calm, content in its quiet role. Time softened even more. The sense of direction faded away. There was only continuation, only the feeling that everything was already taken care of. The world moved forward without asking anything in return. The calm stayed complete, surrounding every moment with ease. The quiet carried on, slowly and patiently. There was nothing left to decide, nothing left to understand, only rest, arriving gently, carried by the same steady rhythm that had always been there. The stillness remained gentle and unbroken. Nothing new needed to happen. The feeling of calm settled deeper, like a soft layer resting over everything. Time no longer felt important. Moments blended together smoothly. The body stayed comfortable. Breathing stayed slow and even. Hands rested easily, waiting without impatience. The surroundings felt steady and familiar. Walls, floors, and open spaces held quiet without effort. Movement happened only when it was needed. When it did, it was slow and careful. One hand reached out naturally. The other stayed relaxed, close by, untroubled. There was no sense of loss or change, only continuity. As the rhythm carried on, awareness became lighter. Words faded into the background. They did not ask to be followed. They did not ask to be remembered. They simply passed through, calm and soft. The mind did not need to hold on to anything. Everything important felt already settled. The sense of protection stayed strong. Life moved forward without sharp turns. Nothing pressed for attention. Nothing felt unfinished. The quiet balance remained intact, steady, and reassuring. The left hand stayed peaceful, exactly where it was meant to be, resting without thought. Slowly, gently, the calm deepened further. The world continued in the same soft way. Hands moved, then rested. Time passed, then faded. There was no clear beginning and no clear end. Only a steady drifting forward, smooth and comforting, allowing rest to arrive naturally and stay. The quiet continued, wide and unbroken, stretching gently in every direction. Nothing changed suddenly, nothing needed to. The feeling of calm stayed exactly where it was, steady and dependable. Time moved forward in a soft, unmeasured way without asking to be noticed. The world seemed to know how to carry itself slowly and carefully without instruction. Breathing stayed calm and even. The body felt supported by stillness. Muscles loosened naturally without effort. Hands rested comfortably, warm and relaxed. One hand lay quietly, the other stayed close. There was no difference that needed attention, no movement that needed correction. Everything felt balanced enough to continue just as it was. Life moved on in gentle repetition. The same motions returned again and again, never sharp, never rushed. The rhythm felt familiar, like something remembered without needing to be recalled. People moved through their days wrapped in routine, protected by sameness. Nothing pulled them out of this quiet flow. Nothing disturbed the calm that settled over everything. The air felt steady. Sounds remained distant and soft. Footsteps blended into the background. Doors closed quietly. Light shifted slowly across walls and floors. These changes happened without drawing focus. They simply occurred, one after another, calmly and predictably. The world continued without interruption. Hands followed their usual paths. They lifted when needed. They rested when not. Movements felt smooth and practiced. The body did not hesitate. It did not question. It simply moved forward, guided by habits formed long ago. The left hand remained peaceful, never hurried, never called urgently. It stayed present, calm, and at ease. As time stretched onward, awareness softened. Thoughts became lighter, less defined. Words drifted past like distant sounds, easy to ignore. Nothing required understanding. Nothing needed to be held in mind. The rhythm of life carried everything along without effort. The sense of protection deepened. The world felt arranged in a way that required no adjustment. Everything seemed quietly taken care of. There was no sense of urgency, no sense of waiting, only a gentle continuation that felt safe enough to rest within. The days passed without distinction. Morning blended into afternoon. Afternoon softened into evening. Night arrived calmly without surprise. Darkness did not feel heavy. It felt gentle and familiar. The quiet grew deeper, wrapping around everything like a soft layer. In this calm, movements slowed even further. The body responded naturally, without conscious direction. Hands moved only when needed, then returned to rest. The left hand stayed relaxed, content to remain still. There was no pressure to act, no pressure to decide. Everything felt allowed to simply be. The world continued in small, steady motions. Water flowed, air moved gently, light shifted slowly. These changes happened without drawing attention. They did not interrupt the calm. They were part of it, moving quietly alongside everything else. Repetition brought comfort. The same actions done the same way created a sense of ease. Nothing felt unfamiliar, nothing felt new enough to disturb the calm. Life continued in patterns that felt secure and dependable. As time passed, the sense of direction faded. There was no clear beginning to focus on, no clear end to reach, only a steady middle stretching gently onward. The mind did not need to follow, it could rest, knowing that everything continued smoothly on its own. The left hand remained peaceful throughout it all. It was not pushed aside, it was not forgotten. It simply rested, waiting without expectation. Its stillness felt natural, like a pause that did not need to end. The calm atmosphere held steady. Rooms felt quiet and protective. Streets felt slow and unhurried. The world seemed to move at a pace that allowed everything to remain balanced. Nothing felt out of place, nothing felt unfinished. Breathing stayed slow. The body felt heavy in a comfortable way. Muscles softened further. The sense of rest deepened, spreading gently from one moment to the next. The mind drifted without resistance. Sounds grew softer, then quieter. Some faded away entirely, others blended into a gentle background hum. Nothing stood out enough to demand attention. Everything felt distant and manageable. The rhythm of life carried on, smooth and uninterrupted. Hands continued their gentle pattern. Movement followed rest. Rest followed movement. The balance remained unspoken and undisturbed. Time lost its sharp edges. Minutes and hours blended together. The sense of passing became less important. The present moment stretched softly, wide enough to hold everything without effort. The feeling of being taken care of grew stronger. There was no need to check or adjust anything. The world seemed to know how to continue without guidance. Everything stayed quietly aligned. As the calm deepened, thoughts slowed even more. Some drifted by faintly. Others dissolved before fully forming. Nothing stayed long enough to matter. The mind rested in this gentle flow. The left hand remained still, calm, and patient. It did not seek purpose. It did not demand use. It simply existed comfortably, part of the quiet balance that held everything together. The environment stayed consistent. Light remained soft. Shadows moved slowly. The air felt steady and calm. Nothing changed abruptly. Nothing needed to. Life continued to unfold in its quiet way. People moved gently through their routines. They followed familiar paths without thought. Their movements felt protected by repetition. As moments passed, the sense of separation faded. There was no clear line between movement and stillness. Everything blended together smoothly. The calm became the background for everything. The rhythm remained predictable and safe. It did not surprise. It did not demand attention. It simply carried on, steady and reliable. Hands rested again. The body settled further. Breathing slowed. The quiet deepened. The world continued without interruption. There is no need to arrive anywhere, no need to reach an ending. The calm itself felt complete. It did not require resolution. The left hand stayed relaxed, untouched by urgency. Its stillness felt right, like a natural part of the flow. Nothing about it needed to change. As time stretched on, awareness softened to a gentle blur. The mind no longer followed words closely. Sounds became distant. Sensations grew muted and calm. The steady feeling remained. Everything stayed exactly as it needed to be. The world moved forward quietly, carrying everything along without effort. Rest settled in naturally. The calm did not break, it simply continued smooth and unbroken, allowing everything to drift gently onward, steady and safe without needing an end. The quiet carried on, unhurried and wide, like a long stretch of calm that had no edges. Nothing arrived suddenly. Nothing needed to announce itself. Time moved forward in a way that felt almost invisible, as if it preferred not to be noticed. The world continued doing what it had always done, gently and steadily, without asking for attention. Breathing stayed slow and even. Each breath arrived softly and left just as quietly. The body felt supported by stillness, as if the space around it knew how to hold everything in place. Muscles rested without being told to relax. There was no effort involved. Rest simply happened. Hands remained calm and warm. Fingers stayed loose. One hand lay quietly, doing nothing at all. The other stayed nearby, just as relaxed. There was no sense that anything was missing, no sense that something should be different. The balance felt natural enough to remain unchanged. Life continued through small, repeated motions. The same gentle actions returned again and again, never sharp, never rushed. Each movement felt familiar, like something the body had practiced for a very long time. There was comfort in this repetition, comfort in knowing that nothing unexpected was waiting just ahead. The air felt steady and soft. Sounds stayed low and distant. Even when something moved, it did so quietly, without breaking the calm. Footsteps blended into the background. Doors closed without noise. Light shifted slowly, almost politely, across walls and floors. The world seemed to understand how to remain calm. It did not demand reaction. It did not require decisions. It simply continued, one moment following another, smoothly and gently. Nothing needed to be solved, nothing needed to be fixed. Hands followed their usual paths without thought. They lifted when necessary, they rested when not. Movements felt practiced and easy. The body did not hesitate. It did not pause to consider. It moved forward quietly, guided by patterns that felt deeply settled. The left hand remained peaceful throughout it all. It was not ignored, it was not pushed aside, it simply rested, patient and unbothered. Its stillness felt natural, like a pause that did not need an ending. As time passed, awareness softened. Thoughts became lighter, less defined. Some drifted by slowly, others faded before fully forming. None stayed long enough to matter. The mind felt free to rest, knowing that nothing required its attention. The sense of protection grew stronger. Everything felt quietly taken care of. There was no urgency anywhere, no pressure to move faster or slower. The pace felt exactly right, steady and reliable. Days passed without standing out from one another. Morning light arrived gently. Afternoon followed without effort. Evening settled in calmly. Night came softly without surprise. Darkness felt safe and familiar, like a continuation rather than a change. In this calm, movement slowed even further. The body responded naturally without instruction. Hands moved only when needed, then returned to rest. The left hand stayed relaxed, content to remain still. There was no pressure to act, no pressure to decide. The environment stayed consistent and reassuring. Rooms held quiet easily, streets felt slow and dependable. The world seemed arranged in a way that allowed everything to continue without interruption. Repetition brought ease. Doing things the same way again and again created a sense of stability. Nothing felt unfamiliar. Nothing felt new enough to disturb the calm. Life flowed along paths that felt worn smooth by time. As moments blended together, the sense of direction faded. There was no clear starting point to think about. No clear destination to reach, only a gentle continuation stretching onward without effort. The left hand remained calm and patient. It did not wait for purpose. It did not seek use. It simply existed comfortably, part of the quiet balance that held everything together. Sounds softened further, some faded away completely. Others became a gentle background hum, easy to ignore. Nothing stood out sharply. Everything felt distant and manageable. Time lost its edges. Minutes and hours blended together. The idea of counting no longer felt important. The present moment widened, holding everything softly. The feeling of being cared for grew deeper. There was no need to check on anything, no need to adjust. The world seemed to know how to continue without guidance. As calm deepened, thoughts slowed even more. Words became less clear, meanings softened. Nothing needed to be followed, nothing needed to be remembered. Everything could simply pass by. The left hand stayed still, relaxed and warm. Its quiet presence felt right, like a natural part of the rhythm. Nothing about it needed to change. Light remained soft, shadows moved slowly, the air stayed calm and steady. Nothing shifted abruptly. Everything stayed gentle. Life continued unfolding quietly. People moved through routines without thinking about them. Familiar paths guided them forward. Their movements felt protected by repetition. As awareness softened further, the boundary between movement and stillness faded. Everything blended together smoothly. The calm became the background of all experience. The rhythm stayed predictable and safe. It did not surprise. It did not interrupt. It simply carried on. Hands rested again. The body settled deeper. Breathing slowed further. The quiet expanded. There was no need to arrive anywhere, no need to conclude anything. The calm itself felt complete. The left hand remained at ease, untouched by urgency. Its stillness felt natural and acceptable. Time stretched on gently. Awareness blurred softly. Sounds grew distant. Sensations faded into comfort. The steady feeling remained unchanged. Everything stayed exactly where it needed to be. The world moved forward quietly, carrying everything along. Rest arrived naturally. The calm did not break. It continued smoothly, allowing everything to drift onward. Moments flowed without edges. The sense of effort disappeared. Everything felt allowed to exist as it was. The body felt heavier in a comfortable way. Muscles softened further. The surface beneath felt supportive and steady. Hands remained still. Fingers relaxed. There was no need to move. Breathing continued quietly. Each breath came and went without notice. The world stayed calm. Nothing demanded attention. Nothing called for action. Time continued wide and gentle. The quiet held everything together. The rhythm remained. The calm stayed. Everything continued softly, steadily, without end. The quiet continued gently, without asking for attention. Time moved forward in a soft and steady way. Nothing needed to change, nothing needed to be added. The calm stayed exactly where it was, reliable and reassuring. Breathing remained slow and easy. The body felt supported and at rest. Hands stayed relaxed, warm, and still. One hand rested quietly, the other stayed close, just as calm. There was no difference that mattered. Everything felt balanced enough to remain as it was. The world around stayed peaceful. Sounds were distant and low. Light remained soft. Movement happened only when needed, and even then it was gentle. The left hand remained patient and at ease, content in its quiet place. Moments blended together smoothly. Thoughts grew lighter, then softer, then less important. Words could fade into the background. Nothing needed to be understood. Everything felt quietly taken care of, and as the calm carried on, it became easy to let go, easy to rest, easy to drift. The rhythm continued on its own, slow and steady, allowing the quiet to remain and sleep to arrive naturally.